Hi everyone and welcome back to another slightly unusual Stalker Gamma video. Today we're going to be talking about the weapons spreadsheet and guns in general. If you would like to look at this yourself, it is linked down below. It is just the spreadsheet that is linked on the official Gamma Discord. I did not make this, someone else made this. Thank you very much to whoever that person is. I'm afraid it doesn't have a name on, so I don't know who's contributed to it, but it is greatly appreciated that someone has spent the time doing this. This is not a complete list. As you will notice, there are blank spaces. Not all the information is here, so don't assume it's up to date. It is specifically stipulated this is not up to date. It has probably not got all the weapons in the game in, and it is certainly missing some information. But we can assume that generally most of the important stuff is correct. Now, there are a lot of tabs at the bottom here: pistols, shotguns, SMG, rifles, snipers, ammo, and explosives. I actually want to start on the ammo tab, so I'm going to switch now to that ammo tab. So here we are, and the big thing that I want to point out here is the BR class. So you will know from your armor that your armor will have a BR rating and a ballistic percentage. The BR rating relates to this. So if you go to any ammo in your inventory, right click on it and click details, it will have a BR class. The number then relates to how effective it is at penetrating certain types of armor, and your armor obviously has a rating as to what level it will stop. So at the top end of the game, if you've got that really strong exosuit armor, then you can stop 72, and in some cases the Unisig one, it's 74. So therefore you would stop the majority of these bullets effectively. That is what it can stop. Otherwise, the bullet would penetrate. Down here, the batteries for the Gauss rifle, they would penetrate because they have a BR of 500. So there's nothing that will stop that as far as I'm aware in the game. The same as the 7.62 x 54mm AP rounds are 80, so therefore would penetrate all the armors in the game. Unless, of course, you have something slotted into the armor which is increasing the BR. I don't know all of these items, maybe you do, feel free to say in the comments, but there might be something that increases the BR of the armor. But that's something just important to note about all the ammo in the game. It all has a BR class or a penetration class, and then the armor has a corresponding BR rating for that. So if you're wondering why your HP rounds aren't penetrating someone's armor, it's because they only have a penetration of 15, and the armor's probably 30. Just to give you an example. Probably the other thing to mention on this page is the flesh damage. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but in general, HP, so hollow point rounds, are high flesh damage. You can see here, the one we had selected with the 15 is high, whereas the corresponding ammo, the armor piercing, and the full metal jacket rounds are just medium. And then up here, you can see there are obviously the buckshot shells and stuff like that, obviously very high, very high. Slug shells and AP shells, only high or high to very high. You know, it varies from shell to shell, but in general, buckshot is obviously going to do higher damage to flesh because it spreads out. And the same with the hollow point rounds. When they impact, they split up and therefore shred flesh. Simple as that, really. But let's have a look at some of the actual weapons. So let's now have a look at pistols. So the pistol tab is pretty straightforward, and the main thing I suppose you might be looking for here is damage. Handling might be an issue for you, but really it's going to be reasonably close range. The maximum range of most pistols is going to be around the 400 mark. Obviously there's some which are 300 here. I expect the Desert Eagles are a bit further range. I can't remember off the top of my head, and unfortunately this isn't complete, so it's not listed. But generally speaking, bullet caliber makes a difference for damage. So the Desert Eagle has bigger bullets, therefore it does 48 damage. Pistols that have, you know, 9mm ammo all do around about 20. I think I've got one of these down here somewhere, and mine does about 20. Some of them do 24, but they start all the way down at 17 and go all the way up to like 25 for various pistol types, with the exception of those big ones with the .357 ammo, the Desert Eagles, the Colt, which do 48. But as I say, most of the time damage is often dictated by the bullet type rather than the actual weapon itself. There are exceptions to this rule, so it's not a steadfast thing. There are exceptions. Interestingly, there are also exceptions within particular groupings. So some of the 9mm weapons do 20, some of the 9mm weapons do 24. I have noticed the ones that do more damage at 24 generally have their maximum range reduced to 300, where my pistol has a maximum range of 400 but only does 20. So, you know, there's a little bit of wiggle room depending on what other stats have been changed. I don't think there's much information along here, not really. It just tells you the alternate caliber, things like that. Because some weapons you can switch the calibers. But in general, yeah, you know, the damage 25 ones are generally the .45 ACP. Straightforward enough. It's mostly based on the ammo type. So when it comes to pistols, go with what you fancy. Do you want one that does high damage, fires slowly, and you might have a little bit more difficulty finding the ammo for it? Or do you want one with very high stability, high chance of finding the ammo, and a little bit lower, or indeed less than half as much in terms of damage like mine that does 20? But then I never run out of bullets for it. So, you know, you've got to balance that for yourself. Moving on to the shotguns, a little bit more straightforward. There are less of them in the game. The majority of them sit at around 189 damage, and then there is a bit of fluctuation around that, some 180, a couple at 160, some at 198. This obviously varies mostly, again, based on the caliber of the shot that they're using. So down here, you can see that the 20x70 obviously has generally higher damage than the 12x76. But that said, it's not a huge difference. I mean, it's less than, it's 9 points to be exact. And then you've got these ones down here with the 23x75. But again, they're nothing special. Really, you're going to come across a lot of the 12x76 ammo on the enemies, because the majority of the shotguns in the game use that. So my advice is generally to go with a weapon that uses that. You can obviously start thinking about getting something like the USAS-12, which can obviously have a mag size of 20, which I had this in my previous playthrough. Very useful. Absolutely no reason not to go for something with a very high mag size. Obviously, generally speaking, these will not fire as quickly as a double-barreled shotgun, but a double-barreled shotgun needs reloading after 2 shots. SMGs, again, there aren't a lot of the SMG class in the game. Generally speaking, damage is around 20 with a few exceptions, based on, again, the caliber of the bullet that they use. So most of them are 9x19 or 9x18, and then there are a few that are 9x20 at the bottom, which have 35, and there are a few at the top which are .45, and there's the 5.728 there. Again, thinking about bullets and accessibility, if you're going to go with an SMG, my advice is generally to go with one of the 9x19 or 9x18mm. Obviously, the damage is slightly higher for the 9x19, but I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with anything on here if you're interested in using an SMG, and they can be very helpful early game. Some people swear by them as a first weapon. My concern with anything like this is obviously running out of bullets, so you've got to kind of keep these types of things on single shot, really. Having them on full auto, you could get a little bit carried away with spraying. I certainly would. Let's now have a look at the rifle list. It is very, very long. The reason it is so long is because there are many different variations of some of these rifles. A quick example, AK-74 starts there and goes all the way down there in its various different models and variations of camouflage and everything else. Generally speaking, the damage output is the same for all of them, 36. And again, damage output is more stipulated by the caliber of the bullet than anything else. And then obviously you have to take into account the type of bullet, which then has an effect on the BR damage it does. So the ballistic resistance that it can penetrate through. The bigger the bullets, so if we go down to the 7.62s, the better the penetration. So something to bear in mind later game when you're going up against people with very heavy armor. maybe you should also think in the back of your mind, oh, maybe I need to have some 7.62 ammo and a 7.62 weapon in my backpack just in case I come up against someone in very heavy armor. That's not to say you can't kill them with another weapon, but it just helps out, doesn't it, if you have, you know, a very, very strong bullet that's going in your weapon as well. So all in all, when it comes to rifles, pick the one that you like to use. Yes, there are people who will say the AK-12 Monolith, which I used in my previous playthrough, with its upgrade down here is very good. And there are people who say the AK-5C is also very good. And some people consider these the best in the game. But the reality is, the best in the game is what you can, A, keep maintained and keep getting bullets for, because you need to be able to shoot the thing. And the other thing is what you find yourself. You might not find an AK-12 Monolith. You might not find an AK-5C. You might not find a s.t.a.l.k.e.r. I mean, I really like the look of the scars down at the bottom here. The FN s.t.a.l.k.e.r, 50 damage a shot, and obviously it takes a 7.62, so it's got more penetration than the standard one that I would be using with the AK-12. And then down at the bottom, you also have some heavy machine guns that do 77, but again, an unusual ammo type. But there are plenty of options in the game. You don't have to follow the crowd and pick what everyone else says. Find the gun you like. The other option is something like one of these DMRs. DMRs are, for those who are not interested in military stuff, basically they're somewhere between a sniper rifle and an assault rifle. So they fire faster than a sniper rifle would, a longer range than an assault rifle, but not quite as effective at long range as a sniper rifle would be, and generally have a smaller mag size than an assault rifle. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. I realised that that was a bit rambly. But the point is, pick a rifle that you want to use, that you can be bothered to repair, and that you can keep stocked up with ammo. Don't feel you have to pick a particular one. Generally speaking, they all do very similar damage depending on the caliber of the bullet they use. Now let's have a look at the snipers. The snipers are, again, a pretty short list. There aren't a lot of them in the game. They all have a long range, obviously, and reasonably high damage, and they all take very interesting ammo types. So there's lots of 7.62s there. There's a 7.92 down at the bottom. And then right at the bottom of the list, there are the Gauss rifles. There are two of these. There is the item N62 and there is the standard Gauss rifle BAS. These are considered sniper rifles. They have very high damage at 166, and they are the ones that have the penetration of 500. So their BR class is 500, so they are going to melt through any armor they come across. So if you can find one in an emergency situation when you need to kill someone in very heavy armor, they might do it in one hit, or at least be heading that way. You also get the Barrett up here, which obviously you will all know as an anti-material rifle. That takes 12.7 times 55 full metal jackets or better. These will absolutely tear through armor, and obviously the damage there speaks for itself. 270, that's higher than a shotgun slug at close range. So there are weapons out there that will do a lot of damage if you go looking for them. I am someone who loved running around with a ridiculous Barrett and ridiculous ammo in the Armour series of games when we were doing co-op missions. The last thing we haven't really looked at here is explosives. There's not a lot to really show off here. There's the grenades and there is the RPG-7 warhead. I mean, it's an explosive, it speaks for itself. Grenades are very good at throwing at groups of enemies and doing large amounts of damage. It's how I ended up with my AK-12 Monolith in my first playthrough of the game. I threw a grenade under the feet of some Monolith soldiers that were walking through cordon, killed most of them in that little initial blast, and then took out the last couple with my shotgun. But thank you for watching, everyone. Please do like, share, subscribe. As I say, you really need to go and look at this list yourself. Yes, I can sit here and talk about it and talk about the weapons in the game, but everyone will have a preference. Some people will think some weapons are terrible and these ones are great. You have to make these decisions for yourself. Go have a look at the list, see what you've got in game. As I say, the list is not up to date, it is not perfect. You probably have something that isn't even on that list in your inventory, perhaps. Rest assured, you're going to enjoy the game no matter what weapon you repair.